Next in the agenda is the lighting of the oil lamp. I would like to invite our chief guest, Dr. Anil Jasinghe, the Director General of Health Services, Sri Lanka, the guest of honor, Dr. Ben Tin Goh, Emeritus Consultant Veterinary Physician, Ambrose King Centre, the Royal London Hospital, United Kingdom, and Guangdong Provincial Dermatological Hospital, Guangzhou, China. The President of the Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine, Dr. D.O.C. De Alvis. The immediate past President, Dr. Darshini Wijevikrama. The Secretary, Dr. Anuruddha Karunaratne. The Treasurer, Dr. Shanika Jayasena. The Editor-in-Chief, Dr. K.A.M. Ariyaratne, Founder President, Dr. Lushan Jayasuriya, representing overseas faculties, Dr. David Barlow, to light the oil lamp. Now, I would like to invite Dr. D.O.C.D. Alvis, the President of the Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine, Dr. Anuruddha Karunaratne, the Secretary, Dr. Ben Tingo, the Guest of Honor, Dr. Anil Jasinghe, the Chief Guest, to grace their presence at the head table. Dr. D.O.C.D. Alvis, the President, Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine, will welcome you all and introduce our distinguished guest of honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to everybody. I am going to welcome each and everyone individually during my presidential address. So at this moment, I would like to introduce our guest of honor, Dr. Bengo, to the audience first. Dr. Beng T. Go is an emeritus consultant physician working at the Royal London Hospital, an honorary life fellow of the British Association of Sexual Health and HIV. He was consultant physician at the Barts Health NHS Trust and Moorfields Eye Hospital NHS Foundation Trust, London. He graduated from the University of Singapore and is a fellow of the Royal College of Physicians of London and Ireland and the Sri Lankan College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine. He has wide-ranging interest in STI and HIV, with particular interest in syphilis, occlugenital and chlamydial infections, genital dermatosis, and STD-HIV in ethnic minorities. He was involved in management guidelines for syphilis, published papers in genitourinary HIV medicine, and contributed chapters in books including Hutchinson Clinical Methods. He was lectured and assisted in training courses in China, Southeast Asia, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, and is currently a consultant advisor to the Gangdon Provincial Center for STI Control and Prevention. According to our agenda, we first would like to listen to you, sir, addressed by the guest of honor. I invite you, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, the President of the College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine, Dr. D. Alvis, Dr. Jasinghe, distinguished guests, members of the committee members, and friends. Thank you for the honor of being your chief guest, guest of honor here. And what I'm going to do today is to share with you some of my experience in China. I've been going there for the past 15 years as I've been here in Sri Lanka. And it all started with a charity called the Barry and Martin Trust, which fund us in my hospitals, a group of doctors, nurses, and health advisors to go to China in various cities to do training and teaching on MSM and commercial sex workers. And from then on, we get involved more and more with the training program in China. So I'm going to go through with you the background, the Guangdong Provincial Center for STI Control and Prevention, the hospital that I'm involved with, that's the Southern Medical University Dermatology Hospital, the STI control programs there, and training the trainers and training the trainees program, clinical governance and research. Now, Guangdong is located in southeast of China. As you can see, that's the Canton Tower. Now I found that you have the Lotus Tower, just as pretty. And the 5 ramps is a symbol for the Guangdong the Guangzhou, the capital of Guangzhou. Now, Guangdong is a big province. There's more than 100 million. Now, the mobile population, this is an important high-risk group because this mobile population, they come to Guangdong to work, and they don't bring their partners along, and they're at high risk of STIs. And they have two huge cities, Guangzhou and Shenzhen, more than 10 million, and it's the top GDP in China, and manufacturing industry is the main industry there, and the total import and export volumes is 25% of the national. So it's a very rich province, and they got lots of money. Also, Guangdong is one of the provinces with the highest STI incidence in China. As you can see, syphilis in Guangdong, syphilis in China, you can see Guangdong is much higher, and same with gonorrhea. And other STIs, as you can see from the graph, is rather high. Chlamydia is top of the list there, followed by syphilis, HPV, gonorrhea, and HSV. Now, this Guangdong Provincial Center for STI Control and Prevention is based in the Southern Medical University Dermatology Hospital. It's also known as the Guangdong Provincial Dermatology Hospital. It's a huge hospital, and there are 13 floors there. And they see almost 500,000 last year outpatients. And in terms of inpatients, they're about 3,500. Now, the hospital aspired to be one of the top dermatovenerology hospitals nationally, and it also has international aspirations. And for their international aspirations, they collaborated with the University of North Carolina to form the UNC South China Research Center, and that's with Professor Myron Cohen. And then they also collaborated with Professor Rosanna Pillings and Professor David Maybe of the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Other research centers include University of Connecticut, the Duke University in USA, and they also contributed to WHO. Now, various STI programs in Guangdong Province, but the main one is syphilis control. They have the Guangdong Initiative for Comprehensive Control of Syphilis. And for HIV, they target mainly the high-risk group. Now, I'm going to talk to you about training the trainers program there. And we find that in the past, the consultants from the center, from the hospital, will go to all the various cities in Guangdong to provide the training. But it's not sustainable, and the consultants will be sort of burnt out from training year on year. So what we do, we decide that we should increase the training capacity by doing the Training the Trainers program, TTT. And it started in 2015, involving the whole province at city level. And we have run 3 courses, and more than 150 people were trained. Now, to help us in the training, we managed to negotiate with the British Association for Sexual Health and HIV to get the DVD translated into Chinese. And we get them, the Chinese, to pay bash an amount for each province to produce 500 DVDs. So 2 provinces has produced this. And it's a 1.5-day program, and we have theory with pre-training questionnaire, lectures on management of STIs, presentations, and we have post-training questionnaire and feedback. For the practical sessions, they have history taking, sexual history taking, anogenital examination, taking specimens for laboratory testing. Essentially, it's see one, do one. So you can see, we are showing them how to take sexual history. So it's all translated Chinese-English. In this case, there's a 22-year-old homosexual man, and we got the history. So this is a doctor there sitting there asking this gay man there. And then C1 anogenital examination. So we show them how to do, followed by showing them directly how to do it. And the person there is my colleague, Dr. Hurihan, who came to help. And then they do one themselves. So we make sure that they can do it and they can take the specimens. And then we have microscopy training for them. Now, to enable the trainers to go back to do the training, each trainer gets a lecture pack and resource material. And we provide each hospital a batch DVD, a male and female pelvic models. And you can see all these models that in the hotel that we're doing the training. Somebody thinks that it's a sex shop selling all these models. Now, the feedback is excellent, but as you know, the Chinese are, they're very polite and they don't like to hurt us. So they always put excellent there. So we're not sure it's really excellent. Now, it has gone to county level. And not only that, this program has been taken up by Shandong province, another province with 100 million people. So we are hopefully spreading to other provinces. And this is a county level training course that we help. So what happens is that the trainers that we train will then start training in their local county, and we then sometimes go and help them to make sure it's running properly. Then the next program that we had is the trainees in the hospital. They got lots of trainees. Now, as they're aware, they aspire to be international hospital. But to do that, you need good English, And their trainees, their English are not that good. So they got me to improve their English and STI skill set through PowerPoint presentation. So I have to give them a talk on how to make a scientific PowerPoint. And it's a holistic training, so it's not just STIs. So they have to do the literature search, prepare the PowerPoint, and then they present to me first. And then we correct their English, and once we think it's good enough, then they present to the whole hospital. So they have STI lectures, like what's new in STIs, debates on hot topics, and then as part of holistic training, we have added values, talk on artists and composers who had STIs, like Benjamin Britten, who had syphilis, same with Paul Gauguin, Freddie Mercury, who had HIV, AIDS, and they have to talk about their life history and their works. So this is one of the sessions there, and see this lady here, one of the trainees presenting what's new in gonorrhea. And this is another training that I had with them. Now, it so happened that the Guangzhou Art Gallery is only 10 minutes walk from the hospital. So every year, we will bring a group of trainees to the art gallery so that they are exposed to art, and they actually will present to us. We get them to talk about different artists down there in English. So last year, we had 4 debates, 12 scientific talks, 9 presentations on Chinese and Western artists and music composers. And overall, we have 50 trainees trained on making English PowerPoints and presentation. Now, clinical governance. It's a very sensitive subject, and if you criticize the hospital, sometimes they get very upset. So to sort of slowly get them used to clinical governance auditing, to show that, this is a good thing to do. So I got to give them lectures on healthcare governance, on implementing STI management guidelines. But we use UK as an example. And so we did audit, and the audit on clinical practice, ensuring adherence to STI guidelines, and we also audited the hospital. Essentially, we tell them this is a no-blame culture. Essentially, desire to improve is important. And the good news is that they actually take on board the recommendations. So many changes were implemented. Like, for example, we found that they have this the post-exposure prophylaxis pack, but they have to go to another hospital to get it. That's ridiculous. How can you have needle stick, go to the hospital? So we managed to get it in the hospital. And then the next year when we audit them, we found that it's in the pharmacy. And the pharmacy, they close in the evening, they close on the weekends, so the pharmacist will be called in. So we finally managed to get them to have the packs in the hospital, in the ward. Now, if you go to the Chinese hospital, it's very popular to have this infusion center. So the patients come in, they straight away put a drip out. without any indication at all. And they said it's good for the hospital because they make money. It's good for the patient because psychologically they feel well. But this is not the right way to do medicine, and we had a debate on this to show that, in fact, there's more risk to have an infusion in terms of infection and so on. So we got them to face it out, which they are doing. And they didn't have any play or nappy changing area, and they have now provided all these fantastic new areas for children. New accommodation for staff, because the previous one was very Dickensian. We took photographs of their Dickensian staff quarters, and they were shocked to find that they don't even realize that their doctors are staying in such poor state. So now it has improved. Now, toilets. I always like to visit hospital toilets because it's a reflection of the cleanliness in the hospital. If you have dirty toilets, we don't think the hospital is good enough. Now, the interesting thing, when we look at the toilets, in the early days, there's no toilet paper. And the excuse was that the patients will take the paper away home. They pull a whole stack of that. But then there's no reason not to have papers. But currently, when we repeat the audit, we find that there are toilet rolls in most floors, and they make sure they can pull 2 at a time. And they also have cleaning duty roster. Now, disabled toilets. And we found that, it's all blocked, and they took action to make sure that the cleaners don't put all their stuff in the disabled toilet just because it's underused. Now, Chinglish signs. You go to the hospitals in China, you find that they got interesting English signs. And we managed to correct it for them. And the drivers like to use handphones, while driving. And we managed to convince them that they should have hospital directive to tell the drivers that they can't use it, so they provide Bluetooth technology for them. Now, success story, in Shenzhen, Guangdong, they screen 500,000 people, and they get 99% success rate in preventing mother-to-child transmission. And if you look, the red line is screening rate going up. The green line, treatment rate of pregnant women with syphilis going up. And you find that the congenital syphilis cases has dropped dramatically. Now, research is a key part of clinical governance, and it underpins clinical practice. So the hospital has this University of North Carolina Project China, where they have the Research Training Center, which was funded by the Americans. I think Trump wouldn't like this anymore, helping China for their research. And this social entrepreneurship for sexual health. And the objective is to foster the development of skills among junior Chinese investigators in order to conduct productive mentored interdisciplinary STD research, and to train pre- and postdoctoral trainees to conduct outstanding STD research in South China, and to facilitate professional growth and development. So the collaborators are University of North Carolina, Guangzhou No. 8 People's Hospital, which is the ID hospital, and Sun Yat-sen University, which is the top university in Guangdong. I understand one of your doctors here had attended the Sun Yat-sen Hospital. And the people who is pushing it is Professor Myron Cohen and Dr. Bin Yang, and with the help of the organizing advisory committees. And as you can see, 4 of the advisory committees are from UK, so we do actually provide quite a lot of support. And there's 4 tracks: basic science, clinical research, epidemiology, social science, where we have training mentors for the researchers. And this is one of the advanced STD course that we ran. And so far, we have run 4 courses and involved 400 trainees. And we had 3 visiting scholars and 5 trainees trained in US, and there are 10 postdocs working. And this SASH has spurred 90+ publications, which is extremely successful. And many of them are in journals with high impact factors. And they have gone one step further. They have the Guangdong STD Control Treatment and Research Innovation Center, where there are 4 key players here. Besides the hospital, they have the School of Public Health and the School of Laboratory Medicine and Biotechnology in the Southern Medical Universities, together with the University of North Carolina. And this one is one of the Guangdong provincial government high public health priorities. You need the government's support to push it. So factors for success in Guangdong. So you need political leadership, you need enthusiastic trainees and trainers, open-minded staff, funding, international working, and learning from other countries, UK, USA, and Sri Lanka. I've always given them Sri Lanka as an example. Because Sri Lanka is small but almost perfectly formed. You got free tests and treatment, whereas in China, the only free test is for syphilis and HIV, and nothing else. And training, China doesn't have DIPVAN or MD. There's in fact no proper sort of training diplomas or certificates for STDs. And you all have your scientific sessions. You send trainees overseas for at least 1 year, and you have your control program. So there's a lot they can learn from Sri Lanka. In fact, I had a debate on free treatment should be given to all important STIs and free tests as well. And the trainees use Sri Lanka as an example where China should be following. So it's a rewarding experience for me, and there's a big gain from moderate effort. And as I'm retired, it keeps my brain active. And despite being a Chinese, I have a lot more to learn about Chinese culture. And there's excellent food, as you can see down below. And it's a good place for sightseeing. It is the famous Penis Mountain. It looks exactly like a penis. And we have old friends, and we make new friends like in Sri Lanka. Now, conflict of interest, I'm the advisor there to the center, and Dr. Li Gang Yang and Bin Yang were my postgraduate doctors trained at the Royal London Hospital through the EU fund. And I'd like to thank all these people who helped me with my PowerPoint. Thank you.
The chief guest for this evening is Dr. Anil Jasinghe, the Director General of Health Services, Sri Lanka. I invite the President to introduce our distinguished chief guest.
Dr. Anil Jasinghe. Dr. Anil Jasinghe has obtained his primary education from the Mahinda College, Galle, and secondary education from the Ananda College, Colombo 10. And he has his first medical degree from University State Medical Institute, Love, USSR, and then he earned his MSc in Community Medicine from Postgraduate Institute of University Colombo, and MD Medical Administration from University of Colombo Postgraduate Institute, and MPA Postgraduate Institute of Management, and FCMA College of Medical Administration. To his CV, he has numbers of memberships and presentations and publications. I don't think I can go one by one, sir. I just go through few. He is a member. He is earning memberships and affiliations in more than 20 organizations, and he's a teacher in undergraduate and postgraduate studies, and he has presented more than 20 papers in his career, and a lot of publications, and he's a researcher and published some researches in peer-reviewed journals. Currently, Dr. Anil Jasinghe is our Director General of Health Services from 2017, but before he come to this top position of our health administration, he held posts of Director General Health Services in Ministry of Healthcare, Nutrition and Indigenous Medicine, and Deputy Director General of National Hospital Sri Lanka, Director Colombo South Teaching Hospital Sri Lanka, Head of Trauma Secretariat, Ministry of Health and Nutrition Sri Lanka. So a lot of more things to tell about you, sir, but my audience is waiting to listen to you. I invite you to take the podium.
Good evening. Good that audience was waiting to listen to me. Otherwise, he would say more things that I wouldn't like to hear. Guest of honor today, Dr. Ben Goh, Emeritus Consultant Genitourinary Physician, Ambrose King College, the Royal London Hospital, the UK, and Guangdong Provincial Dermatology Hospital, China. Dr. D.O.C.D. Alvis, the President of the Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine. Dr. Lushan Jayasuriya, Founder President. Members of the Council and the College, distinguished guests and participants, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored and privileged to address this distinguished gathering today at the inauguration ceremony of 24th Annual Scientific Sessions of the Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine this year. Firstly, I must thank the President and the Council for inviting me for this event as the chief guest. As we all are aware, sexually transmitted infections have become not only a health issue, but also a social and economic issue throughout the world. Other than the non-classical venereal diseases such as syphilis, gonorrhea, chancroid, many other diseases including HIV/AIDS were recognized as STIs from time to time. According to the WHO, more than 1 million sexually transmitted infections are acquired every day worldwide, and each year there are an estimated 376 million new infections with one of the 4 STIs: chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, and trichomoniasis. The WHO statistics also reveal that more than 900,000 pregnant women were infected with syphilis in 2016, resulting in over 350,000 adverse birth outcomes, including 200,000 stillbirths and newborn deaths. Unfortunately, in some cases, STI can have serious reproductive health consequences beyond the immediate impact of the infection itself. For example, infertility and mother-to-child transmission. It is noteworthy that the majority of STIs have no symptoms or only mild symptoms that may not be recognized as an STI. Furthermore, drug resistance, especially for gonorrhea, is a major threat to reducing the impact of STIs worldwide. When it comes to global situation of HIV/AIDS, since the beginning of the epidemic, 75 million people have been infected with the HIV virus, and about 32 million people have died of HIV. Globally, 37.9 million people are living with HIV at the end of 2018. In Sri Lanka, according to the NSACP data, in 2018, 350 new cases of HIV were identified with a cumulative total of 3,192 from the first case detection in 1987. However, fortunately, Sri Lanka remains a country with low prevalence of HIV. A few flashbacks of the history of STIs. It is reasonable to think that STIs and syphilis in particular did occur in ancient times. However, their prevalence seems to have been so low that they seem to have reintroduced in the early 16th century by the Portuguese who invaded the west coast of Sri Lanka. Measures to control STIs in Sri Lanka have been in operation for about 175 years. The Vagrant Ordinance of 1841, the Contagious Disease Ordinance of 1867, and Brothels Ordinance of 1889 were important steps with a view of controlling STIs. You can see there are many ordinances for single gamut of diseases. I don't think there are any other topics governed by so many ordinances. Of course, there are some more to come in my address. However, STI control in an organized basis was started in 1921. The first free clinic for STIs were established in the Port of Colombo, Lady Ridgeway Hospital, and in then General Hospital, Colombo. Another important milestone in Sri Lanka was establishment of the Venereal Disease Control Program in 1938. In the same year, Venereal Disease Ordinance was passed and clinics were organized in outstation hospitals also. In 1939, the program was placed under a qualified surgeon, Dr. H.C.P. Gunawardena, who took measures to reorganize the control program. Medical officers were trained and placed in outstation clinics. Case holding and contact investigation practices were introduced later. In 1942, although STIs were made notifiable disease, this was not properly implemented. The anti-venereal disease campaign was established in 1952, and thereafter many OPD buildings of provincial hospitals had rooms dedicated to VD clinics with separate access. With 13th Amendment of the Constitution of Sri Lanka in 1989, the anti-VD campaign was decentralized. With the identification of cases of HIV/AIDS, in the late 1980s, the campaign was renamed the National STD and AIDS Control Program, and more attention was given to prevention and management of HIV/AIDS. Now, we can see how the STIs have evolved from highly stigmatized diseases, along with separation, isolation, sometimes punishment, to a integrated care, what is available at present. But still, you could see the stigma attached to these diseases is still there among public and sometimes with medical professionals as well. So I know the difficulty that the campaign come across in mitigating this kind of stigma. Because removing stigma is one of the strategies that will give dividends in case of diseases like this. It is noteworthy that under 1997 to 2001 World Bank project, a new 4-story central STD clinic, including the reference laboratory, was constructed. This became the headquarters of NSACP. In addition, 21 provincial and district STD clinics were refurbished, and laboratories and equipment were provided to all clinics. Vehicles were also provided to every clinic to facilitate preventive work in the community. These changes enhanced STD HIV control and prevention work in the respective provinces to enable work to be carried out in a more systematic manner. Venereology was considered a specialty within public health after establishment of the anti-VD campaign. Then there was a separate cadre developed for specialists in venereology. Then there was medical officers who were selected for a career in venereology were trained for 3 months at the central VD clinic, managed STD clinics for about 2 years, and then sent abroad for a diploma in public health plus special training in STD in centers of excellence. These were through fellowships awarded by WHO and Colombo Plan. With the establishment of Postgraduate Institute of Medicine, From 1980, the specialist qualification became MD Community Medicine with training in venereology. Later, the seniors in the field perceived the need for specialized training in the venereology. This led to the founding of the College of Genitourinary Physicians in 1995, whose name was later changed to the Sri Lanka College of Venereologists. It was later renamed as the Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine. It is now the academic and professional body in the field of STIs, HIV medicine, sexual health, and related preventive programs in the country. Since its inception, the college has had many achievements. I am happy to say that the college has taken initiatives to establish Board of Study in Venereology in the PGIM in 2001. It started organizing courses for postgraduate diploma in venereology from 2002 and the MD in venereology from 2003. It has produced many doctors with PG diploma and MD qualified specialists to cater to the needs of the country. The college has been instrumental in guiding national response in prevention and control of STD, including HIV and AIDS. It is remarkable, its remarkable contribution to maintain very low prevalence rates of STIs, including HIV, despite many socio-demographic factors pushing Sri Lanka towards a higher level of epidemic, should also be appreciated. The college has chosen reaching the unreached in STI and HIV as their theme for the 24th annual scientific sessions in this year, which I believe is timely need of the country. The sessions this year consisting of free paper sessions, guest lectures, and presentations which will undoubtedly help enhancing the knowledge and skills of healthcare professionals, which will in turn help address problems of unreached populations with regard to STI and HIV. At this juncture, I must say a few words about mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis. As you all know, we are confident that we would receive the certificate of EMT-CT. We had the national validation team presided by me, and then, as you know, recently the regional validation team visited, and they visited various areas of country, various units, and they were very happy with the present day preparedness. In fact, before this, I went to attend the regional committee of WHO in New Delhi. There, one of the CRO officials told me that the preparedness of Sri Lanka for EMT-CT is remarkable. So then I sensed that we should get a good news. So in the end, we believe that we would get a good news very soon. And in this endeavor, I must thank the college and the consultants and all the staff of the NSACP for addressing this issue and for their untiring efforts in reaching this milestone. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the President, Council, and the members of Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine for their very important contribution and partnership in preventing and treating STIs, including HIV/AIDS, and maintaining Sri Lanka as a low prevalence country for HIV. I wish the 24th academic sessions a great success. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine will now make the presidential address.
Okay. Chief guest, Dr. Anil Jasinghe, guest of honor, Dr. Bengo, distinguished overseas guests, representatives of UN agencies and international partner organizations, past presidents, founder president and founder members, fellows, my office bearers, and council members, and all other members of the college, distinguished invitees from Ministry of Health, my dear teachers, colleagues, staff members, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would make the opportunity to welcome you to this 24th annual scientific sessions of Sri Lanka College of HIV and STI and Sexual Health and HIV Medicine. Let me have my presidential speech to say my opinion and college opinion why we selected this theme, reaching the unreached in STI and STD. It is undeniably another happiest day in my life, and it's a great pleasure and honor to address you as the President of Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine. The theme, as I already said, for this 24th annual scientific session is reaching the unreached in STI and HIV. Sky is the limit for this theme, but we don't have all the time in the world to go into each and every detail to cover the theme. Therefore, I will mainly focus on understanding some areas of strength to be strengthened and propose solutions to achieve end AIDS by Sri Lanka by 2025 through reaching the unreached in STI and HIV. You already heard about these statistics from our Director General, but I would quickly go through it again. Why the same things repeating again? Because I think our chief guest and myself using the same search engine and Google, and it gives the WHO data updated up to 2018. So it's important to know the global and local burden of STIs and HIV. So just quickly see what's happening in the world. Estimations are there, 37.9 million people are living with HIV in the world at the end of 2018. Out of them, 23.3 million people are accessing antiretroviral therapy. And during that year, 1 million people became newly infected with HIV, and 770,000 people died from AIDS-related illnesses. The previous speaker mentioned total numbers as well, 75 million people infected since the beginning of the epidemic, and 32 million of people died of AIDS-related illnesses. Regarding global state of the STIs, similarly, as our Director General mentioned, burden is remarkable. More than 30 different bacteria, viruses, and parasites are known to be transmitted through sexual contact. STIs have a profound impact on sexual and reproductive health worldwide, and the numbers are there, how many millions of sexual STIs acquire every day. So as previously mentioned, the 4 diseases, chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, and trichomoniasis, responsible for 376 million infections each year. So more than 5 million people are living with genital herpes, and estimated 300 million women have an HPV infection, which is the primary cause of cervical cancer. Estimated 24 million people living with chronic hepatitis B globally, both HPV and hepatitis B infections having a preventable vaccination although. The majority of STIs have no symptoms or only mild symptoms that may not be recognized as an STI. STI and HIV, what is the combination? STIs such as herpes simplex virus and syphilis can increase the risk of HIV acquisition, maybe 3 times to 10 times higher risk of HIV acquisition for people with herpes infection and syphilis. In some cases, STIs can have serious reproductive health consequences beyond the immediate impact of the infection, for example, infertility and mother-to-child transmission of STIs. Antimicrobial resistance is a major threat to reduce the impact of STIs in the world. Most European and American countries already experiencing gonococcal and mycoplasma resistance to most antibiotics. Now in the global picture, let me draw your attention towards Sri Lankan epidemic. The estimated number of people living with HIV in Sri Lanka is 3,500 in 2018. The island remains a very low prevalent country for HIV since beginning of the epidemic. The number of PL-HIV diagnosed and alive is 2,709. This number was generated by subtracting reported deaths from the total reported HIV cases since 1987. Therefore, in my opinion, this needs an adjustment for unreported deaths. This is a cross-sectional HIV treatment cascade as the end of 2018. According to this cross-sectional HIV cascade, you can see out of this estimated 3,500 people living with HIV, 77% of PL-HIV know that they are positive, but this doesn't represent that what I told, unreported deaths since 1987. This has resulted low percentages in next 2 steps in the cascade. That is 45% for people receiving treatment and 38% for who achieved viral suppression. There is a total 1,656 people living with HIV who know their status and are currently linked with HIV treatment and care services. So this is kind of a more realistic number because we know they are currently linked with our treatment services. I repeat the number 1,656 at the end of 2018. Out of this total 1,656, that is kind of a 47.3% from the total estimated number 3,500 who are currently linked with HIV treatment and care services. 95% of them have been started on antiretrovirals. So the difference is that if we get the actual numbers who are already linked to our services, so it is 95% on treatment, and 85% are having viral suppression. So in that case, we have achieved what this UN 90-90-90 targets, which has to be achieved by 2020. Is already representing by this bit corrected data for that unreported deaths. So this is a chart actually created using that data. You can see out of that 47.3% are out of that 100% of people living with HIV, only 47% are following up in our services. So you can see on the other hand, 1,494 yet to be found according to this analysis. So this is a longitudinal HIV treatment cascade among people living with HIV who initiated antiretroviral therapy in 2017 and followed up to end of 2018. It shows 97% are enrolled in treatment out of the estimate, and 90% retained on antiretroviral therapy after 12 months. 75% have achieved viral suppression. So this is the picture, actually, the current status of the campaign, HIV care services. People diagnosed are almost all integrated into care services, and 90% of the diagnosed are on treatment, and 75% of them are suppressed. Ladies and gentlemen, this data shows that we have to reach, I state reach, significant number of unreached PL-HIV in almost all steps in HIV cascade, especially finding undiagnosed PL-HIV. We all know the only way to know one's HIV status is to have an HIV test. So this slide shows the accelerated HIV testing services in Sri Lanka. In recent years, we have accelerated HIV testing services, reaching a total number of nearly 1.2 million HIV tests carried out in 2018. A total number of HIV positive persons detected during the year was 350. This indicates a HIV seroprevalence of 0.03 in Sri Lanka. While largest contributors to testing numbers remained blood donor and antenatal mothers, the highest numbers of HIV positives are from STD clinic samples. Apart from this survey samples, TB screening and HIV rapid tests done in hospitals showed higher yield. Community-based testing done in drop-in centers for female sex workers, MSM, transgender women, and drug users showed no positives. These facts highlight the importance of targeted HIV testing to increase the detection rate, which will help to end AIDS in Sri Lanka by 2025. With this background information in mind, I invite you to carefully look into our theme again, reaching the unreached in STI and HIV. There shouldn't be any disagreement when we talk on targeted HIV testing. Most important targets should be key populations. We name them as KPs in short. In Sri Lanka, KPs include men having sex with men, we use the term MSM, male sex workers, MSW, female sex workers, FSW, transgender women, TGW, injecting drug users, IDUs, and beach boys. The report on national size estimation of the most at-risk populations for HIV in Sri Lanka reveals there are total of 83,600 above-mentioned KPs distributed within the country. During 2018, we have reached 44% of them, I would say, or they have reached us and tested for HIV. STD clinics and outreach programs, which includes escorted peers, community-based drop-in centers, and a key population-led HIV testing pilot project conducted in Puttlam, Kalutara, Colombo, and Gampaha district. You can see in this project, interesting results, a total of 3,715 HIV tests done. 3,715 tests done. Sorry, it's okay. I'm not going to use a pointer. Don't worry about it. And detected 20 screening tests positive. Detected 20 screening tests positive in this project, and 13 confirmed HIV positive after a confirmation test. Unfortunately, 7 out of that 13 confirmed HIV positive, 7 are already known patients. But we found 6 new HIV patients and 1 negative. And I want to draw your attention, it is, I said 20 screening positives, and we have confirmed HIV 13. There are 6. Those who are screening positives are defaulted their confirmatory test. So after this much of strenuous project, we have identified screening positive number, and then we have lost 6 from confirmatory test, and we don't know whether that 6 people are HIV positive or negative. So kind of a drawback I just want to highlight. IBBS survey conducted in 2017 and 18 reports, they researched 3,431 key populations, and survey concluded with following findings. Overall, the prevalence of HIV and STIs remain very low across the key population groups in Sri Lanka. Kind of a happy statement to hear, but my comment is we should understand there is no room for complacency. The presence of risk behavior, including inconsistent condom usage, poor health-seeking behavior, poor knowledge of HIV, combined with poor coverage of HIV prevention programs, could result in increase in prevalence. My comment is we should strengthen condom prevention program known as CASP in short, and awareness programs on prevention and behavioral change among key populations. As a result, the situation should be closely monitored through routine and sentinel surveillance. While being proud and happy about how much we have already performed, rest of my presentation is you to think again how good we have done and how much more we have to do. Regarding reaching key populations based on available data, I already said we have reached and tested 44% of estimated HIV population. But the other side of the coin is we have failed to reach 56% of them. If I count on these key population estimates, I have no option than agreeing to this statement. I don't know the people in back can see this slide clearly, but this is a kind of screenshot from our National STDs Control Program website, and it explains key populations in Nuwara district where I come from. Top end tab shows that Nuwara district data. The day I saw this slide or web page, I had doubts on these figures. I guess having the same thought in my work college in middle of this hall, who came all the way from Nuwara to this inaugural ceremony. Friends, 1,000 high-risk MSM, or men having sex with men, 770 female sex workers, 200 male sex workers, and 66 transgender women. I'm asking my colleagues there, have you seen them in Nuwara? I assume your answer is no, I can't hear anything, but now I believe to myself this should be the correct figure. Of course, they don't attend our clinic, but they are there. Are we waiting them to reach us? We already do standard outreach programs to vulnerable populations, but the problem is we have not identified most key populations. In other words, we have not reached them. They are hidden amongst general population. My question, could they be the missing or undiagnosed portion of PLHIV? I assume my venereology colleagues from other districts where NGOs, community-based organizations working with these key populations are not operating will agree with me at least to a certain extent, if not fully. I share this beautiful slide from Kenyan National AIDS and STI Control Program on their key populations and quote this sentence from this. These individuals live amongst us and relate with other people and families in the community. I would like to repeat it again. They are talking about these key populations. In that country, that majority are female sex workers and people with injecting drug users. MSM comes number 3. They say these individuals live amongst us and relate with other people and families in the community. End of quote. This Kenyan saying tells something beyond hotspots. It voices where to find them. They are amongst the local community. So where should we offer them the HIV test? I repeat results of our accelerated HIV testing program for your peruse. We had to test 346,000 antenatal clinic samples to find 10 HIV positives. But it is worth the purpose. We eliminated mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis from Sri Lanka. We had to test 417,000 blood donor samples to find 34 HIV positives. But it is worth the purpose. We have no reported transfusion-transmitted HIV since 2004 because of this 100% screening of blood-donated samples. We had tested 67,395 armed forces samples to find 6 HIV positives among them, but yield is 0.01. which is below the national zero prevalence figure. We had to test 187,000 private hospital samples to find 71 HIV positives. Yield is little better, 0.04%. We tested 16,935 prisoner samples and found 8 HIV positives. Yield is a little more better, 0.05. In bold letters, I highlight we tested closer to 8,200 samples each from government hospital and TB patient samples and found 10 and 11 HIV positives respectively. Yield is 0.12% and 0.13%, much higher than the other samples. Ladies and gentlemen, this suggests its worthiness of provider-initiated HIV tests for people attending hospitals, irrespective of looking for traditional risk factors and age-defining illnesses, but people with any indicator disease of mild to moderate immune deficiency. Last year, we launched this program for hospitals and gave posters to display in wards, clinics with these indicator diseases to offer HIV test. Studies have suggested annual HIV testing for key populations and at least one-time HIV testing for all other adults. Offering provider-initiated HIV testing at GP centers for clients who never had an HIV test will help to identify these hidden people living with HIV. However, STD clinic experience shows highest case finding efficacy is through testing partners of newly diagnosed people living with HIV. Therefore, strengthening of case finding through partner tracing needs to be enhanced. This graph shows the number of reported HIV infections by age and sex during 2011 to 2018. It is obvious that men aged above 15 years show a steady increase over the years, while children and women are in a plateau phase. A steady rise of male-to-male transmission of HIV over the last 6 years warrants more attention on this group to curb the epidemic. As I mentioned earlier, there are many other aspects of our theme. We already had a very successful pre-Congress session in the today morning on early integration of palliative care for PL-HIV. Actually, this is another part of our theme, reaching the unreached. It is a kind of a care service we have to reach for our PL-HIV population under our care. We will be discussing more in detail at our scientific sessions tomorrow morning. We have eminent speakers from Australia, India, UK, USA, and our own resource personnel from Sri Lanka. They will enlighten us with new knowledge on how to reach unreached goals of STI, HIV, sexual health, and prevention sciences. Ladies and gentlemen, Sri Lanka is aiming to achieve UNAIDS 95-95-95 target of ending AIDS by 2025. That is 5 years ahead of the global goal to end AIDS in 2030. We have to reach the unreached targets in STI and HIV to achieve this goal. I wish that scientific knowledge we gain through this 24th annual scientific sessions of Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV will lead us to this goal. Thank you. Traditionally, let me take a couple of minutes from you. Traditionally, the secretary of the college proposed the vote of thanks. However, it is my duty to specially thank everyone who contributed in my journey to become a specialist in the field of sexual health and HIV medicine, and during my tenure as the president of the college in 2018 and 2019. Firstly, I would thank my secretary, Anuruddha Karunaratne, my council, and members of the Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health for enormous work they did throughout this couple of years. I thank director, consultants, doctors, and other staff of National STDs Control Program, Colombo, and District General Hospital, Nuwara for the support they extended. All my teachers who guided and inspired me for success at various levels in life. I thank my colleagues, friends, and relatives who encouraged me for my success. And a big thank you, my wife Indika, and my son Taraka Banu, for being my strength throughout the stressful, busy months and all the love and support they extended. Finally, I think of my late mother Sofia Vitanachi and late father Dharmadasa Dialvis. I feel sad for not having them with us here today, but I am proud I made their dreams come true. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you again.
This year, the Council has decided to award fellowship to a distinguished personality in the field of venereology, Dr. Darshini Wijevikrama. I would like to invite Dr. Jayadri Ranatunga to read the citation for Dr. Darshini Wijevikrama.
The President, members and honorary fellows of the Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine, Chief Guest Dr. Anil Jasinghe, Director General of Health Services, Guest of Honor Dr. Bengo, and distinguished invitees. I have great pleasure in presenting Dr. Darshini Nilmini Wijevikrama for the award of the Fellowship of the Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine for the year 2019. Darshini, born to Mr. D.Y. Wijevikrama, who had been the principal of St. Aloysius College, Galle, and Mrs. Elena Wijevikrama, who was a teacher, had her school education at Southlands College, Galle. Darshini excelled in her studies and many extracurricular activities during her school days. She has led the school debating team and has been awarded as the best debater and the best orator in the school, and has won many places in district and provincial oratory contests. She has been a member of the best school debating team in the Galle district, which won the Vincent Pandita Memorial Shield. She had a passion for painting, and one of her drawings had been sold out in an exhibition in Bulgaria. She has won the first places in all island and district level poetry writing contest as a schoolgirl, which paved the way to publish her first poetry book in 2016. Darshini obtained MBBS from the Faculty of Medicine, University of Ruhuna, and postgraduate diploma in venereology and MD in venereology from the University of Colombo. She had her post-MD overseas training at the Sexual Health Unit, St. Mary's Hospital, Portsmouth, UK, and got board certified in 2011 as a consultant venereologist. Currently, Darshini works at the STD Clinic Teaching Hospital, Galle, which obtained accreditation as a center for postgraduate trainees during her period of service. Darshini is the immediate past president of Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine. As the president, she organized the first ever college sessions held in collaboration with an international professional body in the field, that is, with the International Union for STIs, during her tenure in 2017. She is a member of the Board of Study in Venereology and an examiner for MD and postgraduate diploma in venereology. She has been the chief examiner at the selection examination for diploma in venereology in 2018. She is a clinical trainer for the medical undergraduates of the Faculty of Medicine, University of Ruhuna, postgraduate trainees in diploma in family medicine, legal medicine, and for the trainee nurses and midwives. She is also a visiting lecturer of the Faculty of Allied Health Sciences, University of Ruhuna. Darshini was a speaker at the third biennial meeting of South Asian Society for Sexual Medicine held in Colombo in 2017. She did the country presentation in the SARC Training of Trainers on infection control for TB and HIV held in Kathmandu in 2018. representing Sri Lanka. She has been a presenter and a member of the local faculty in the annual scientific sessions of the Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine during recent years. She has published her studies on pattern notification services and prevalence of epithelial cell abnormalities in pap smears in the Sri Lanka Journal of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine. She was a member of the editorial board of the Sri Lanka Journal of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine in 2017. She has written some chapters on the national guidelines for management of STIs, HIV, and opportunistic infections, and has done the script writing and direction of a short educational video on HIV. On a personal note, I have known this multi-talented lady for many years as a good friend, colleague, and a dedicated consultant. Mr. President, in recognition of her contribution to the specialty and to the college, it is my great pleasure to present Dr. Darshini Wijevikrama for the conferment of the Fellowship of the Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine. Dr. Darshini.
I would like to request Dr. Darshini Wijevikrama and the President to remain on stage for the next item in line, which is awarding of the medal for the immediate past President for the year 2017. May I now invite the President to award the medal to Dr. Darshini Wijevikrama. I would like to invite the President to remain on stage to award the following medals. Dr. Lushan Jayasuriya and Mrs. Jayasuriya have been awarding a gold medal for the best performance at the Diploma in Venereology examination since the year 2003. The recipient of the medal for the year 2019 is Dr. Yuvani Attanayaka. Dr. Iyanthi Abheyavikrama has been awarding a gold medal for the best performance at the MD in Venereology examination since the year 2014. The recipient of the medal for the year 2018 is Dr. Vindhya Pereira. Thank you, sir. Now, Dr. Anuruddha Karunaratne, the Secretary of the College, will propose the vote of thanks.
Good evening, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. As the Secretary of the Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine, I am honored to propose the vote of thanks at the inauguration of the 24th Annual Scientific Session 2019. First of all, on behalf of the college, I wish to extend my gratitude to the two most important persons tonight, the chief guest, Dr. Anil Jayasinghe, and the guest of honor, Dr. Ben T. Goh. You made this event very colorful. We are greatly honored indeed to have you here tonight. I am very grateful to Dr. Balo, Dr. Vanessa Appia, Dr. Carol Crow, Dr. Mahesh Ratnayaka and Dr. Rasanga Liyanage for being with us during the academic sessions this year. The college recognized your contribution to the specialty of venereology. We are privileged to have your valuable support and hope it will continue in the future years. My special thank goes to the President and the Council of the Hill Country Clinical Society who collaborated with us in the pre-congress session in the palliative care. It was a pleasure working with you. I wish to extend our gratitude to all the speakers and distinguished scholars and academia, both international and local, who agreed to deliver interesting lectures at the academic sessions. Dr. Buddhini Karunaratne, Dr. Sandeepana Gamage, Dr. Ben Goh, Dr. Rasanga Liyanage, Dr. Vanessa Appia, Dr. Sachin A. Silva, Dr. Pabasari Ginidi, Dr. Prageet Premadasa, Dr. Mahesh Ratnayaka, Dr. Carol Crow, Dr. B.B. Revari, Dr. G. Veer Singha, Dr. Dayanath Ranatunga, Dr. K.A. Mariaratna, Dr. Lilani Rajapaksa and Dr. Geethani Samaravira. Without your presence, this event would not have been a reality. I wish to express my gratitude to the World Health Organization and the FHI 360 for the support extended in organizing symposiums. I thank WHO country representative Dr. Rasya Pense and Dr. Manjula Dhanasuri of WHO and Dr. Dayanath Ranatunga of FHI 360 for giving their fullest support in this endeavor. I wish to express my gratitude to Dr. Carol Crow, Dr. Vinay Appia and Dr. Ajit Karavita for accepting to be judges for the pre-paper session and the poster presentations. I wish to thank the persons who kindly agreed to be chairpersons at the sessions. Dr. Chaturara Sirivardhana, Dr. David Balo, Dr. G. Veerasinghe, Dr. Iyanthi Abevikrama, Dr. Jayanthi Allitigala, Dr. Jayadir Ranatunga, Dr. Ajit Karavita, Dr. Lilani Rajapaksa, Dr. Kulasiri Boddakorala, Dr. Chitran Hathusinghe, Dr. Lushan Jayasuriya, and Dr. Shriyakanthi Benragama. A big thank goes to you. I wish to thank Madam Abevikrama and Dr. and Mrs. Lushan Jayasuriya for their continuous encouragement given to the postgraduate trainees in venereology by awarding medals for the best performance in the diploma and MD. I thank the director of the National STDs Control Program, Dr. Rasanjali Hettiarachchi, for giving her fullest support to make this event a success. You are deeply appreciated. My special thank goes to Madam Dr. Lilani Rajapaksa for the support given at all times and allowing me to carry out college work despite the heavy work schedule. And I thank doctors at the HIV clinic, Dr. Dileka, Dr. Vindya, Dr. Randima, Dr. Kumari, and Dr. Sanoja for covering up for me. I should specially commend the continuous support and the pieces of advice given by Dr. G. Veerasinghe, sir, which laid a great foundation to this event. Your thoughtfulness and support was a great strength to me. Dr. Ari Ratna, my mentor, your commendable work as the editor-in-chief in the Journal of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine, you have made this journal to new heights. Thank you for the exemplary leadership given to the editorial board as well as the support and guidance given to me. I thank Dr. Ajit Karavita and Dr. Nalaka Abegunasekara, the assistant editors who were always reachable and helped with their expertise when needed. It's difficult to find words to thank you. I wish to thank Dr. Charukshi Aravepola, Dr. Manjula Rajapaksa, Dr. Gayani Nanayakara, and Dr. Darshani Mallikarachi, who reviewed free paper abstract within a very short time. Dr. Prageet Premadasa helped tremendously in making the conference proceedings and with the free papers this year. Your involvement was a great relief. Ladies and gentlemen, an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels started turning long before. It requires months of planning and bird's eye view for detailing. I must mention that we had to overcome numerous challenges this year, worst of which was the Easter bombings, which resulted in a dilemma whether to go ahead with this year's sessions or not. However, here we are. I was fortunate to have the leadership of the President, Dr. D.O.C. Dialvis, who entrusted me with this post, continuously guided and supported me. I learned a lot through that experience. I sincerely thank the Council of the 2019, whose enthusiasm, motivation, and engagement resulted in this big event. Dr. Himali Perera, Dr. Jayadir Ranatunga, Dr. Dilmini Mendis, Dr. Darshani Mallikarachi, Dr. Nimali Jayasuriya, Dr. Chitran Hathurusinghe. A special thank goes to you. Dr. Chandrika Jayakodi, thank you for being a resource person along with Dr. Mahesh Ratnayaka in the skill building session for the postgraduate diploma trainees. Dr. Geethani Samaravira, thank you for the leadership in organizing the pre-congress sessions. Dr. Shanika Jayasena, our treasurer, thank you very much for the hard work and entrusting me with the money matters. You are a great strength. I thank Dr. Tilani Ratnayaka and Dr. Nimali Vidanagiya for supporting the skill building session. Thank you, Dr. Lasantha Sirivardhana, for the support given in various means. I fail in my duty if I do not thank Dr. Hemantha Veerasinghe for her invaluable support and guidance throughout this period. Also, I thank the permanent doctors at the NSACP and the other staff accommodating our needs even with the limited resources available. I thank Dr. Darshani Vijay Vikrama for sharing her past experience and those valuable pieces of advice. A very special thank goes to always reachable past secretary, Dr. Pimi Perera. I must mention that you gave me a very generous and active support. Dr. Damindu, thank you for leading the transport department, a domain which I know very little about. I was lucky to be surrounded by a bunch of ever so motivated and cheerful junior colleagues, Dr. Udari, Dr. Kanchana, Dr. Sachini, Dr. Kumari, and Dr. Yuvani. You delivered what I asked you. I am in debt to the diploma trainees in venereology, Dr. Vasanti, Dr. Chani, Dr. Dilanka, Dr. Tilini, Dr. Sharmila, Dr. Lashika, and especially Dr. Dulipa for assisting in smooth functioning this whole event. Your team spirit is just marvelous. Thank you. Dear Dr. Udari, thank you for accepting to come here today, giving life to the event. Dr. Nadira and Dr. Gayan, you were responsible and dependable, with heaps of work as always. Thank you very much. Dr. Iresh, my dear friend, you are a great strength to me. Thank you for being there for me always. Dr. Lahiru Rajakanna, thank you for the very lovely video background. My colleagues, you were the strength behind me and always there for me despite being overburdened with work. Dr. Vindya, the Assistant Secretary, who managed the academic activities throughout the year despite your other commitments and successfully organized the pre-congress. Dr. Dileka, the friend in need who took over the demanding task of organizing the inauguration. I can't thank you enough. Dr. Randima, who organized the fellowship dinner, and Dr. Shalini, who managed the free papers. A very big thank goes to you. Dr. Tanuja, who organized the skill building session, and Dr. Krishanti, who excellently managed the food and beverages department. Thank you for being there. There's a special group of people without whom events of this scale will remain only in our imagination. Those are our valued donors and sponsors. I am thankful to the platinum sponsors, Gilead Grants, GFATM, especially Dr. Satya Herat, the World Health Organization, FHI 360, and the gold sponsors, Ministry of Health, Manson Ceylon Private Limited, Inventia Healthcare, Imaka Main B Ceylon Limited, and the silver sponsors, State Pharmaceutical Corporation of Sri Lanka, George Stewart Health, Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka, Glenmark Pharmaceuticals, A. Bauer and Company, SMM Halcyon Private Limited, and the other valuable sponsors, Hemas Pharmaceuticals, MQ Pharmaceuticals, Sunshine Healthcare, MR Pharma Private Limited, Lanka Hospitals, SDR Automart, and Mass Intimates. A big thank goes to you all. I wish to thank the Sri Lanka College of Forensic Pathologists for kindly lending their cloaks for this ceremony tonight. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation to the management and staff of Goldface, especially Ms. Nimanti, who gave us saved us a lot of trouble. A big thank goes to Mr. Kamal Dishanayaka, who went beyond his routine role this year to make this event a reality. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dinesh, for being the college photographer consecutively in the last few years. I thank Mr. Sudat Abeshekara for the graphics, Mr. Karunadar for the printing services, and University of Visual and Performing Arts for the cultural event. I have to thank my wife Yogisha and my family for bearing up with me and supporting me throughout. Finally, and most importantly, I wish to thank all of those who are present today and participate in the sessions, because it's you who make events like this fruitful. Kindly accept my sincere apologies if I missed to mention any one of the numerous people who extended their great support. And please do excuse us if there had been any situation that went beyond your comfort zones. Thank you and have a pleasant evening.
Now, I would like to request the distinguished guests at the head table to kindly take their seats in the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, to bring a glorious ending to this spectacular evening, please put your hands together to invite the vibrant and exciting dancing group of students of University of Visual and Performing Arts, directed by Professor Shriyani Rajapaksha, to inspire and entertain us with their breathtaking rhythm and sound. More into the details of what we are going to witness in a moment. First item is a traditional low country dance called Telme, which is performed in Pahatarata Madhu Shanti Karma. This is done as an offering to the god. Mallakkan, Bambaravalalla, and difficult turns can also be seen in this act. The next act is named as Kuweni, a contemporary dance choreographed to a modern song, which describes the Vijay Kuweni story of our history in a modernized way.
Kuveniye ma kuveniye mama tamanna enava rubariye ma rubariye mama ale soya enava saluaranget palayan kumariya nevaka negi maru enava kumariya kuveniye ma kuveniye mama tamanna enava rubariye ma rubariye mama ale soya Kiliti depa mad tavarai kuveniye vessa veti teta tavari kuveniye palayan kumariya nevaka negi maru enava kumariya kuveniye ma kuveniye mama tamanna enava oh rubariye ma rubariye mama ale soya
With that, we have come to the conclusion of the inauguration ceremony of 24th Annual Scientific Sessions of Sri Lanka College of Sexual Health and HIV Medicine. The ceremonial procession will leave the hall now.